All right, so I'm doing another stream just to kind of remind myself to talk in front of the microphone and not to talk away from it, right? So I might keep the microphone on like this from now on because this might be my preferred way of speaking. I think it's better. I think you guys can hear me better. I realized I wasn't speaking properly into the microphone. So I want to address that by kind of doing another stream for just a little bit. So let me where did I go? Okay. Uh, there was something else about GTA. Hideo Kojima confirmed GTA 6 has affected release dates, including Death Stranding 2. Wait, didn't you just? Oh, so you got maybe they wanted to like release the game like in the fall, but they just were rushed. And then like we should release in the summer, but now that it's been delayed, they want to maybe delay it again. I mean, I can see that happening. Death Stranding 2 was supposed to release in September. Kojima says companies try to avoid big hitters such as GTA 6 and explain how developers and publishers have had to adapt. Some are saying GTA may or may not release in November. As soon as it would be announced for November, everyone would move out of their way. For instance, if a new Mission Boss movie were to release in May, others wouldn't be able to compete with that, so we'd go somewhere else. Genki's post also claims GTA wanted a September, so Kojima wanted a September release for Death Stranding 2, and this was likely changed due to potential clouds with GTA. We now know GTA 6 releases on May 26th. This likely has given many publishers a huge sigh of relief for 2025 summer games that's likely to be right with release dates all dropping this year. This is going to be really fun because there's basically no games coming out in the fall except Ghost of Yote and Death Stranding 2. GTA 6, the biggest adventure game of all time? Probably because it's just. I mean, when every game doesn't want to release in May. I know the Prince of Persia remake is also coming out in 2026, and they have. If I was a publisher, I would give the Prince someone who wants for it to be successful. I would like for them to be given a 2 month buffer. So like 2 months of like if it's releasing in May, then don't release in April or March or June or July. So like August to basically in the fall or in do release like February. February at the best. So that's what I would do if I was the Ubisoft publisher because I hope the remake is successful because it's one of my favorite games. And yeah, so that basically covers that. Um, that's why there's basically no good games. It's quite disappointing that they didn't announce the delay sooner because I think um some games may have been now changed a lot. I wonder what the procedure is, whether we just try to hurry it up sooner, or whether we just delay it longer, right? Like what's that procedure? Like if you want your game to be successful, I'd always recommend giving the developers longer so they can, make the game as polished as it can be. All right, Half-Life 3. How many more times do we have to hear about Half-Life 3? Like, I think at this point we shouldn't really trust anything until the game's released. Um, I really thought Half-Life Alex would have killed any um any kind of hopes and dreams about Half-Life 3 because to me Valve has always been kind of the company that jumps on new tech and to kind of be like the pioneers of new tech. So even in like Half-Life 1, right? Like there weren't any developers having like a focusing on a story narrative based first person shooter because all like games back then were basically just like the original Doom. Story is basically I think one of the Doom developers said story in games is like story in porn. No one gives a fuck about it. But Valve said, and proceeded to release Half-Life with pretty realistic, with great emphasis on story, characterization, and just narrative in general, and got praised for it. Half-Life 2 initiated a physics section alongside with it too. And then for Half-Life Alex, they were the first progenitors of VR, where they probably the first AAA game, a AAA developer to actually jump on VR and actually make it a core part of the game. A game cannot be played without VR. So really, to me, what is the reason behind releasing Half-Life 3, right? Because there's no new tech at all being developed, any new high tech, and to me, that's the whole point of Half-Life. It's not just a first person shooter. It's a Wait, am I offline? Why does it say I'm offline? Maybe was I offline? I'm gonna restart that just so I think I was offline. So Half-Life 3. I don't know how many times I've heard about Half-Life 3 in my life. Probably like since the 2011, 2012 when the Half-Life 3 memes started, propping up. But just a quick summary of what I just was explaining. Half-Life has always been more about embracing new technology rather than just making a first-person shooter. So the first one was a really emphasis on story during the 90s. No one was really focusing on story in games. It was really more about just making a fun game and stories like porn in video games. It's like no one gives a fuck about it. But Half-Life came around and says no, you care about the story. The story is important. Half-Life 2 was more of a physics engine. It was more like, look at all the cool new physics we add to the game. Look at like the Half-Life. Look at like the gravity gun that we added. That we can really manipulate physics very strongly. And Half-Life Alyx was a VR game. So this new tech, no developers focusing on VR. So we'll be the first ones to do it. And Valve has all the money in the world to to develop it. And it's almost insane to me just how much half finished projects are about. Probably hundreds of just games and ideas that they never come to fruition. Because when you're raking in like $1 billion a year off of just like, I think CS skins alone, yeah, you can just literally like not not release any games, right? And you get 30% of every game ever made, yeah. And every game released on Steam, yeah. So you have an ability to just basically, twiddle your thumbs for all of eternity. So that begs the question: what's Half-Life 3? What's so special for Half-Life 3 for them to be like, we have a new technology, we have something new to show you that's worth actually your time? Because in this day and age, like, every game is possible, right? Like, like, and there's I would say, like, now we've reached a creativity in AAA space, but we've reached a point where money isn't an obstacle, right? We can have these huge games and like these amazing voice acted characters and these beautiful worlds and these just amount of content isn't an issue for games. So I really wonder what the new gimmick of Half-Life 3 is. And that begs the question. So information about Half-Life development progress comes from Tyler. Tyler's new Ask Me Anything dived into fully fledged discussion about Half-Life 3, discussing the game playtest, plot, development schedule, and more. Also, McVicker also said that Half-Life will not be a VR title, which is very concerning, which is very interesting. Starting with its development progress, Vickers said that the game is the furthest it's ever been, and Half-Life is playable from end to end. Currently, the developers are optimizing and polishing the game, and it's probably already content locked. If it's not, then it's mechanically locked. Procedural generation. So Vickers said earlier that Half-Life is being playtest serverless so widely that some playtesters will divulge all details, starting with the procedural generation. Seems that this feature, Half-Life, will not be related to just changing geometry, but changing entity placement. Doors, physics, props, enemies, items, or NPCs can be considered entities. However, procedural generation will not build a brand new level. This feature will not extend to the story or of the game either. Said that being playtest really is more widely that some it seems that this feature in Half-Life will not be related to changing geometry, but changing entity placement. That does not sound that interesting. I just have to say, like, changing entity placement, doors, physics, props, enemies, items, NPCs can be considered entities. However, procedural generation will not build a brand new level. So that doesn't sound that interesting. If they wanted to innovate Half-Life 3, because that they do want to innovate, they could have added something akin to the Nemesis system, but innovate on it. And it's really upsetting that they didn't go through with that, but who knows? Mayfigure also provided some details about Portal 3, stating that Eric wants to do Portal 3 so fucking bad. Further into the video, he also noted that most of the team will retire after the release of Half-Life 3. How would you ever want to retire from, like, Valve? I heard it's pretty good place for most of it. Depending on who remains, Portal 3 might become the next single-player project for Valve. Also, Shell from Portal might pop up in Half-Life 3. Other news, yeah. So in other news, last time we heard about it was the playtesting. Yeah. In other news, the last time we heard about Half-Life 3, it moved to its next playtesting stage. What are your thoughts on Half-Life 3 and what's playable? I, like I said, I don't believe it until I see it. I just, I've heard too many rumors, heard too many memes in my lifetime that it's playable, and then it got recanceled and it got redeveloped. Like, I've heard too much shit. At this point, I need a trailer. But to hypothesize on what it can be, I legitimately do think procedural generation is probably an untapped potential of creativity, right? Like, the procedural generation is how the Nemesis system came to be, right? So that's how Judas supposedly came to be, right? Judas, the upcoming game by the developer of Bioshock Infinite and the original Bioshock. That's what they're focusing on. So I think procedural generation is legitimately like the one area of game development, AAA space, where we haven't seen any development on, right? Procedural generation is mostly used for the indie developers trying to make roguelikes. So I really do want to see a AAA developer really focus on it, right? Like a procedural generate a complete procedural generated story that's kind of fine tuned would be kind of amazing. So I really hope we see it. I said it last week when the clicks are low and make up some bullshit about Half-Life 3. It works every time, yeah. Basically, just talking about Half-Life 3 as if it's game with compatibility is so far in development as playable from banks and a single screenshot is leaked. Color acceptable. I mean, it's possible. Like, we also haven't seen a game with the scope of Half-Life 3 so far in development that's playable from banks and yet not even a single screenshot has leaked. Color me skeptical. Well, I was gonna say GTA 6, but that leaked for sure. But again, there have been some big games that haven't leaked, and look, I think the thing about the leak at Rockstar was that wasn't even an employee. That was just some crazy guy who was just outside of the Rockstar entirely. So, if you're wondering, see what happened. Anyway, this was a test stream, and I'm actually dead. I just want to do a